President Biden signed an executive order that will affect millions of Americans. $500 stimulus checks have finally begun being mailed out and deposited into bank accounts, and eligible people have received it. Top lawmakers are discussing now whether the fourth stimulus package should include one-time payments or recurring monthly payments. Everybody, there's a growing number of Senate Democrats that are currently pressuring President Biden to extend rescue measures as the country continues to recover. 21 members of the Democratic caucus wrote to the president urging him to include recurring direct payments as part of his recovery plan. The senators, led by Finance Committee Chair Ron Wyden, aim to tie to the aid of economic conditions so relief does not lapse too early. The senators wrote, "This crisis is far from over, and families deserve certainty that they can put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. Families should not be at the mercy of constantly shifting timelines." Senator Wyden has long called for Congress to phase out assistance as the economy improves. So while the job market continues to climb back toward pre-crisis levels, many people worry the existing aid measures will not go far enough, while roughly millions of people are receiving some form of unemployment benefits. A broad range of Democrats support recurring stimulus checks. From moderates like Senator Stabenow and Bennett to progressives like Senator Warren, and 6 committee chairs across finance, agriculture, banking, judiciary, and budget services. In the state of Massachusetts, they will implement a one-time employee premium pay program this week, sending $500 payment checks. The state of Massachusetts will deliver checks to 500,000 people, and the big winner will be essential workers. In a new Twitter post, the senator wrote, "Distribution of the first round of $500 checks for low-income workers under the crisis Essential Employee Premium Pay program is finally happening. I am glad that these essential workers who worked through the crisis are still getting a little help." So friends, the Massachusetts governor signed the crisis program into law. The state of Massachusetts allocated around $500 million for premium payments to workers. They distributed $500 payments to 500,000 low-income workers across the state. And to be eligible, you must have filed your 2020 tax return, reside in Massachusetts during 2020, or a part-year resident that lived in Massachusetts between March 10, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. However, anyone who has collected unemployment payments in 2020 is ineligible for the first round of checks. Now, the Department of Interior also announced that it will resume the sale of oil and gas leases on federal land beginning next week. The Bureau of Land Management will begin issuing final environmental assessments and sale notices on Monday for future oil and gas projects, and will offer for lease approximately 173 parcels on roughly 144,000 acres, an 80% reduction from the acreage originally nominated. The move comes as President Biden faces gasoline price hikes, soaring inflation, each of which could prove politically catastrophic. Biden has said during the campaign that he wanted to end such leases and put a moratorium on them the first day of his presidency. Congress is ready to pass new stimulus legislation that will send monthly recurring checks out to low and middle income households. So earlier, President Biden spoke in Iowa. President Biden formally announced the authorization of some gasoline in the United States in an effort to increase fuel supply and reduce gas prices across the country. During his speech, President Biden said he's doing everything within his power to bring down the price of gas across the country, saying families' budgets and Americans' abilities to fill up their tanks should not be affected by the crisis. Now, the president also addressed inflation, which accelerated in March to a new 4-decade high. President Biden said everything is going up as he pointed to new inflation numbers. The Consumer Price Index, a measure of inflation in the economy, hit a 4-decade high in March. A brutal reminder for Democrats of the political headwinds facing them as they seek to keep the majority in the House and Senate this fall. Prices rose 8.5% from March 2021 to March 2022, while they increased 1.2% from February to March. On the climate, health, and education provisions in the package, and is emphasizing that the longer the party takes to act, the more difficult it will be to pass such provisions. It is Democrats' top priorities to get the bill passed as soon as possible. It is likely we will see the bill passed in the House as soon as this month of February. And Biden's current framework for the Build Back Better includes $400 billion for child care and preschool through programs funded for 6 years, in addition to expanding across to universal preschool for all 3 and 4-year-olds. The plan also limits child care costs for some families to no more than 7% of income. Parents must adhere to work requirements to qualify for this. This heavily debated provision would expand Medicare to cover hearing services, but the framework eliminated a proposal for Manchin to include dental and vision benefits too. A key priority for Bernie Sanders, but Manchin believes the program's solvency should be addressed before it is expanded. Democrats expanded the child tax credit and for 2021 in their $1.9 trillion relief bill, and wanted to extend it to 2025. But Biden's updated framework extends the child tax credit for another year, just this year. So what do you think about Senator Manchin and Joe Biden, everybody? Tell me in the comments down below.
Yeah, we paid $413 billion last year, which is 7% higher than 2020. Do you know what the duration of our federal debt is?
I do not, sir.
Okay. And do you know off the top of your head the amount of unspent COVID money is?
We talked about the state and local dollars being around $300 billion, but 97% of the pre-ARP COVID funds remain obligated, and most of the direct COVID response dollars in ARP are obligated or spoken for.
Do you stay up with what the inflation rate is, the producer price index increases have been?
I do.
And what are they?
7%.
For which
recently?
one? For what, CPI?
For CPI.
Okay. So, Ms. Coloretti, can you give...
That's correct, nor do I think inflation is the only problem. But let's talk about inflation. If it has peaked, what does that mean? Does that mean the Fed's going to say, just kidding, it's coming our way, so we're not going to tighten? Of course not. We're still in an emergency Fed funds environment, meaning that rates were set when we went into the pandemic, and they haven't come up meaningfully. They were set when we went into the housing crisis and have yet to come up meaningfully from there. So Fed's going to keep tightening because, pure and simple, our balance sheet can't continue to be so upside down. But inflation and the Fed are one problem. And the reason why I bought the SARC last week is because what also is worrying the market is Putin. What if Putin does use chemical weapons? What if Putin does use supposedly tactical nukes? That's going to be a pretty bad event for the market. And then let's talk about earnings. So earnings will come under pressure. And we've seen what happens when earnings are good. Today you get relief in the banks, but last week we had good numbers from B of A, from Goldman, and the stock traded lower. So if that's what happens when earnings are good, what's going to happen when earnings are going to be poor, when margins are under pressure? So the market's not going up. I don't think that was a peak inflation rally. I think that was a bear market rally, and we're still in a bear market. So I would use those rallies, if they're meaningful enough to sell, liquidate some positions.
Joe, I thought earnings were going to save the day. Right? I mean, I keep hearing that earnings are still good, and they're going to be good. And even though earnings growth is expected to slow,